Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Promised Neverland manga review. This one's going to be for chapter 150, which is called 700 Year Desire. And I overall, as I said before, like where we are in the manga right now. I think the only real issue I probably have right now is just that, they are holding off on a lot of other big things while they do this heavy focus on demons, but it is a focus that I think is needed to characterize all of these people, characterize the lords of these regent houses, characterize the queen, so we get to know them better. Like, I understand everyone wanting to go straight back to Emma and Ray and what they're up to, but this is ultimately stuff that is needed. And other than that, I think my only real issue would be that I think the art, especially when there's a lot of demon stuff going on and not a lot of human stuff, I think it does get a little messy. There's a few points here where it just doesn't feel quite right. And I think part of it might be down to Allegra Velima's design as the queen. But we'll get into it here. So, we have it here, the face-off, the queen versus Jiren and his forces. And it seems like at the end of last chapter, they completely got one over on her. It was revealed that there was like suicide bombs basically attached to all of Jiren's men, and their dead bodies, because she obviously chopped all their heads off, were just going to explode and kill her, take them down, take her down with them. So we see the explosion go off, and it's revealed here, truly comical, you didn't even scratch me. So I think pretty much everyone expected that to be the case, but the twist on this is that Jiren had actually considered this. It wasn't even going to be as simple as charge in, use the secrecy of the hidden bombs on everyone to take her by surprise, but actually go a step further than that and actually have the bombs be filled with an adhesive. So that's what happens here. The queen's movement begin to become restricted, and this is actually the kind of master level part of the plan here. And we have in a little flashback here explaining where this plan actually came from. Just everyone noting that, we can kill the regent houses and their families, but the bloodline of the king is on another level. This is the only hand we can play to take the queen's head. So that is interesting that we've had this mentioned a few times before. The royal family is on another level, but it being referred to here as the bloodline of the king is very interesting to me. So obviously, who is the king in that case? So that's something to keep an eye out for. So yeah, it's at this point she realizes the explosives were just a way to kind of disperse the adhesive onto her to stop her movement, and they go back to the flashback and just explain that that's how they're actually going to do it. And we've actually cut all the way back here to the plan in progress. So this is Jiren still back in his like wild sort of demon form. Anyway, They note that, if us servants go straight for her, the queen is sure to slash our heads off with precision. That's when you, our lord, is going to eat us. So that's what we basically found out, the loyalty of the people who support Jiren. They're willing to give up everything to get him back into power, including, I suppose, him taking their power into himself by having him eat them. So I suppose this is where they get across this idea that I'd never been entirely clear on before, but is it just a thing with demons where if they eat other demons, they just get more powerful, full stop? Because that's what seems to happen here. Jiren says, I'll take on all of your feelings, and he eats the kind of severed heads of all of his men here to gain their power, and he says, all of us together will defeat the queen. So it seems like as what we're heading into here is that the queen has been outsmarted and Jiren has powered up to absolute maximum. Already at the start of this battle, he was basically already at the top 2 or 3 demon type level. But over the course of this battle, the idea is that he has gotten stronger from gaining his full intelligence back through eating the royal families, and then now he's even more powerful because he's ate his subordinates who've been taken out. So he now should have the power to go one-on-one with the queen despite her royal blood. That's their plan overall. So we see the weapon that Jiren is using here is this kind of pretty crazy club thing, and he just starts, clubbing the queen in the head, basically. And Iverk is obviously at the back here, just trying to kind of keep himself alive. And the first blow, it says, there's not even a crack in that tough mask. That's within expectations. But what has happened is that this massive blow from this club has like snapped her neck. And so he says, until I can break it, until I can rip it off, whatever it takes. And he's just kind of saying, for the sake of our people, Your Highness, you will now meet your end. And we see eventually the mask does begin to crack off the queen, and we get to see her face for the first time. And it's very unusual looking, the design here. She seems to have three eyes, and it's completely asymmetrical. It's just this weird kind of off center, like one of the eyes is bigger than the other, then there's two of them on the other side. It's very weird looking. So I wonder what's up with that, if they're going to go in on what the difference is between the royal family line and normal demons, or what makes a demon bloodline strong, that sort of thing. But anyway, Jiren thinks he has the victory here. He takes his sword out and prepares to obviously deal the finishing blow, that being stabbing her in the eye, the weak point of demons. And yeah, he begins to thrust down. The queen seems like she's taken completely by surprise, and that she gives a kind of face of shock. But then the immediate next panel, and the idea is that between these two full page panels, there's literally a tenth of a second or something like that happens. That in the inch or so between the blade entering her eye and in the last little bit of distance it has to cover, she acts incredibly quickly, because we just see this cut to Jiren thrusting down, to all of a sudden Jiren exploding into just these cubes of flesh that very clearly they show a crazy sort of motion blur on the queen's hand, as she's clearly just really, really suddenly, quickly moved her hands, and they're obviously their blades completely, and she just slices them apart. So Jiren has just been utterly annihilated here, and we see the chunks fall to the ground. The servants are like, "Your Majesty, you did it." And she just cracks her neck to basically get back on track, revealing that, yeah, she hasn't really taken much damage. She was in a little bit of a tricky situation, but she is just so much better than everyone else that all they did was tire her out just a little bit. And Jiren is shocked that this has happened. How has it gone so badly? And this is where we probably get to see the queen, I suppose, properly talk for the first time. To think you dolts made it this far. I'm shocked that you have the tenacity to survive for 700 years. Quite frankly, well done. But that as it may, be that as it may, you are foolish. After having the luck to survive, you ought to have secluded yourselves in the mountains or the valleys and stopped thinking of your petty revenge. And it says here, he was given a purpose, and we were given an obligation to prove that he was right. Worthless. Here, look, Jiren, justice doesn't always win, as she shows his severed head to the room filled with his dead subordinates. And she just says, no, you've already deviated from justice. You raised your hand to innocent children. As soon as you did that, there was no way you could be forgiven. Your justice makes me laugh. These 700 years have corrupted you. You're brimming with hatred. And she just says, I actually like the current corrupted you better. And yeah, so this is where she puts his face down on the ground, stabs him through the eye, killing him for good here. Because throughout this whole conversation she was having with him, he was thinking that he could regenerate his body back together and get back on track. But no, she puts his face in the ground, stomps through it. He is dead. Jiren has just been killed here. Iverk begins to laugh, and then he also comes over and starts sort of, what is it that he does here? Yeah, he starts stomping on the remains of Jiren and his forces. I think very much presenting the idea that Iverk potentially doesn't have a lot of power himself and is really just in a position because of political kind of power type stuff. The queen doesn't really seem to say anything to this. She just kind of watches Iverk do this, but she grabs Jiren's head and is about to eat this to, I suppose, gain his power, which will, I suppose, restore her potentially. And at this point, bullets start to come in here. Which I suppose the idea here is that this is meant to stop the queen from being able to eat the other demons so she'll gain power. And it's revealed here that this is where the queen and everyone figures out that the mastermind behind everything is humans. And the character who steps through the door here is Zazie, so the guy with the sort of bag on his head. One of the probably the most mysterious member of Norman's crew, because there's definitely a story to him. And it says here in the sort of marketing sort of tagline, mankind's strongest, Zazie emerges. So they're setting up the idea that Zazie is the most powerful sort of human fighter going up against demons. And we're getting here Lambda versus the Queen. The battle begins. So the Queen is, I suppose, maybe slightly weakened. She obviously is now open. Her mask is gone. That means she is vulnerable to attack. That's something that Jiren did accomplish. He is now gone. So it's like Iverk, the Queen, and some servants against like all of Norman's forces, effectively. So what is the full plan here? When will the poison be used that they had kind of set up from before? This gas that can kill demons. When is that going to come into play? And then, yeah, what is the full scope of Zazie's power? And I suppose in general, like, who is Zazie? Why does he wear the bag on his head? What's going on in all of this? There's definitely something to him beyond just he's the strongest guy. So I wonder what is going on there. But yeah, that's an interesting reveal. It means that the story is now going to, I suppose, shift focus from being very demon versus demon to now it is Norman's forces directly trying to execute more or less the final stage of their plan. That being, if they can kill the Queen and Iverk, they'll have taken out everyone on the top. Then they'll be in control of the capital and can, I assume, kill any demon they want from there. So this is a very important stage of the plot, and I assume somewhere along the way here, Emma is going to arrive on the scene. As I suppose Norman makes his entrance into the battle here, we're going to see probably Emma arrive also, and I suppose the others will be fighting as Norman watches on, and Emma talks to Norman, and then we might see Ray arrive at some point. The question here is, of course, is there more to the Queen's powers? And like, will the Queen struggle at all with the humans here? Because other than the fact that her mask has been cracked, she hasn't really suffered anything particularly, damaging here. So they really are going to have to get over just how powerful the Lambdas are in all of this, especially Norman's like lieutenant characters. Yeah, that is something definitely to keep an eye out for. But yeah, overall, I think this was a pretty interesting chapter. I know a lot of people are kind of like, wow, what was with all the setup for Jiren when they were just going to kill him off? But I actually liked that he was this sort of, recurring character in the story. They'd set him up here, a stage of Norman's plan. We got to see him borderline go from a plan that could have worked, and it could have ended if they'd taken the story in a certain direction, with Jiren actually being like potentially the biggest threat, that Norman might have miscalculated and Jiren was actually the one at play here. Apologies about him disturbing this, but anyway, we'll try and go on despite this distraction. So yeah, there's still that to it. I think that just that Jiren did add something in that. I think over the course of these couple of chapters, it was surprising how good that story was, how much you sort of got behind him, sort of understood his revenge, but also, yes, understood that he took it too far with killing the children and the, I suppose, desperate nature of some of the plans at the end, that ultimately, he couldn't match up against the strength of the Queen and the royal family line. But that makes it all the more sort of tragic because he didn't get his revenge, he didn't get his justice. It is still a thing that Iverk is basically just allowed to apparently get away scot-free. So I think the biggest thing for like Jiren going forward is just, I suppose, basically the hope that Iverk is taken out and he gets his kind of just desserts, basically. And I think that's going to be interesting and pretty satisfying when it happens. I get the impression that Iverk probably will be taken out here. Maybe the Queen might somehow manage to escape or something like that, but I think Iverk will end up getting taken out here by the humans, and that will be his ending. That would be a pretty interesting way to kind of get over the fact that the Queen couldn't protect Iverk here from the humans, but she was able to defend him from like Jiren, even though he was so much of a threat. So, overall, I'll say I like the Jiren plot. I'm glad it's not going on too long, and it's done with now. We're on to what we were waiting for here, and this is the actual plan. The humans, the Lambdas, Norman's squad versus the Queen and Everk. So we'll see what happens next time out. But yeah, that's my thoughts on the chapter. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts were. But that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.